This video was released 3 days early on Patreon. Hey there, I'm Aki, and we've made some major progress on Call of the Void in the past few months. Mesh islands, a Hydra revamp, new creatures, a custom base piece, and more. Let's check out the Hydra changes first. The original model was made for the animated trailer, and optimized for that. That does mean though that in-game, it doesn't really look as good as I would have liked. That's because all the details are part of the same texture, so to get them looking better, I'd have to increase the size of the entire texture. So what I've done is taken inspiration from the actual game, where on the Cyclops for example, most details are actually separate objects. I separated all the details from the main texture and added objects instead. I also took the opportunity to change the entire look of the Hydra a bit, to make it look a bit more clean, and I think it turned out great. Here's a before and after comparison so you can see all the changes. Let me know what you think down in the comments. While I was working on the new textures, I also created new damage types for the different health bars. In the Hydra shard, any damage was repaired with hull breaches, but systems and engine damage didn't actually cause hull breaches. That of course was very annoying. I mean, who wants to have to crash their submarine into a wall to cause a hull breach just so that they can repair the engine? So now, systems damage appears in the main cabin in the form of these breaches, with hanging cables and pipes and everything. And engine damage now actually shows up on your engine, and when it's destroyed, it even has a custom model. To repair it, you just use the welder tool on the new hull breaches or the engine itself. I've also been working on a rework of the skill tree visuals. You guys never actually saw the original design for the skill tree since it was disabled in the shard. So here's what it looked like. It's fine, I guess, but I thought I could do better. So I did, at least in my opinion. This is the new design. I even made an animated example of what interacting with it could look like, and I hope you like it. Of course, all the values here are just placeholders because we have no idea what the values will be in the final mod, so don't take any of this for granted. Oh, right, we also figured out the tech needed to display 360-degree images on the walls of the back room in the Hydra. We even can now take images in-game and display them there. This turned out to be more complicated than we thought, but with this tech, we should hopefully be able to use it for all the features we had in mind. Totally unrelated to the Hydra, we also figured out how to play custom animations on the player model. We weren't sure if this was at all possible, so this is super exciting actually. With this, we can have the player actually interact with buttons for the elevators in the Hydra, for example, or give new tools completely custom animations too. Of course, this animation is just a test, so it doesn't look good, but you get the point. Oh, if you want sneak peeks, monthly devlogs, and be able to influence the mod, check out our Patreon page in the description. There's some pretty cool rewards. Before I get into what our modders have implemented in the past few months, we have a new team member. One of our other modders, Mishes, is taking a break to focus on his education for a while. So Brad has joined the team to fill in. Some of you might know him from his YouTube channel, where he messes with Subnautica in crazy ways. We are very glad to have him on the team, and he's already been doing some great stuff. He has been working on the groundwork for base attacks to work. So, for example, giving all creatures attractions and aversions to light, heat, and noise, as well as making sure your base actually emits all of those. The way we're currently imagining the system to work is as follows. Whenever you build a base, every piece affects how much heat, noise, or light your entire base emits. Creatures will at first not care about your base, but when it then, for example, emits too much light, all creatures with light attraction values lower than your base emissions will be eligible to attack. They won't continuously attack, of course, because that would be insanely annoying, but when there are enough eligible creatures, a raid will start, and all of them will try to destroy your base. After that, there will be a cooldown so it doesn't happen constantly. There are multiple ways to defend your base if it happens, or even prevent a raid altogether, since we don't want to make this mechanic too annoying for people that don't want to interact with it. For example, loudspeakers that emit a ton of noise and therefore deter creatures that don't like noise. Of course, if you're in a biome with creatures that are attracted to noise, you probably shouldn't use this. Brad also has gotten to work on finishing our effects system. We showed this off in a previous devlog, but it was incomplete. We are now implementing all of our concept effects, and I'm looking into reworking the visuals. Mainly because I completely forgot that you can now pin recipes and they would overlap with the effects. But I'm also not a fan of how they look currently. I think this means the top left is the only area that we can put them now without any overlap. So I think that's where we'll have to put it. Getting back to bases though, L, our other modder, has successfully completed the first custom base piece. Some people thought it was impossible, but we did it. The Auto Bulkhead is an upgrade to the regular bulkhead and will automatically open and close depending on how close the player is to it. It correctly snaps to your base in places just like the regular bulkheads. It will reinforce your base and it will be super useful during raids to stop your entire base from flooding and without you having to go through a really long animation to open it. These will also automatically be a part of the Hydra dock, which we'll be implementing next. Psst! If you want to support the mod and get delicious GamerSupps in the process, use the code AKI at checkout for free shipping until May 23rd or 10% off afterwards. L has also been working on implementing our first islands. Since Void Editor sadly didn't work out, we had to find a new way to add islands. We ended up with mesh islands, which are basically just objects, like any creature, tool, or even the Hydra. Of course, that does come with a few drawbacks. We first had to figure out how to actually apply the terrain materials to a custom object, which took some time to figure out and produced some interesting results. Eventually, we got it to work though. Sadly, we then realized that this causes some major performance issues, loading all of the points of the island at once. To solve this, we ended up cutting up the islands into cubes and having 3 different detail levels. The highest details are loaded right next to the player, and it drops in detail the further away from the player you get. This is what it looks like in game, where we've visualized it with different colors for the different details so you can actually see them switching. I am really impressed that we managed to get this to work, so good job to our modders. This does cause a separate issue, where there are sometimes holes in the islands, but since these only happen far away from the player, I think it should be fine. Another issue with this approach is that grass is actually part of the terrain system in Subnautica, so we'll have to figure out a way to place it on our islands ourselves and still have it move like it does in the game. We do have a couple ideas for that already though. Using this tech, we've already put the first custom island into the game. It has functioning collisions and the correct materials too. The collisions are a bit funky in the caves, but we'll adjust that later of course. Of course, it's also way too flat, but we're using it mainly for testing at the moment. We are, however, working on the actual islands for our first custom biome. They are still work in progress, but I thought you'd like to see them anyways. For all the precursor fans out there, we've also started detailing our first precursor base. The basic layout is done and we'll be detailing using Blender, but also in-game. Precursor bases are pretty complex, so we'll use some of the existing assets and add them to our own base. I'll also be working on concepting the puzzles you'll have to complete in this base, so you'll probably hear more about that in the next devlog. Lastly, we've added several new creatures. The purple puffer is a creature from one of our patrons, which they wanted to puff up when threatened. I've also tried to achieve an effect where it seems like it's always looking at you, which I think actually ended up working quite well. It will spawn in one of our new biomes, and no, you can't eat it. What you can eat though is the bladefish. Our Patreon supporters voted for it being edible, and so you can. This little guy only has a single eye that can rotate to always face you. It's also incredibly thin, and uses that to disguise itself as a blade of grass to hide from predators. It's super fast though, so you'll have to get creative to catch it. We've also completed the model for horned sharks, a new creature in another new biome, but again, I don't want to spoil too much here. I mean, of course there are tons of new concepts, soundtracks, sound effects, and even more creatures we've been working on, but if I showed off everything, the final mod would be kind of boring. So I think I'll leave it here. That's everything we've been up to in the past few months. Remember to check out our Patreon or GamerSupps link in the description to support the mod, and I'll see you next time. Goodbye!